Hi guys, welcome back to A Life Education's podcast. We're here with Kris Greene, who's strength and conditioning coach and youth development coach here in Dubai. Welcome.
Thank you. How are we?
We are good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
So Kris and I are friends from quite a long time ago. Back in the first day of our university in 2008, just 10 years ago.
Oh my God.
We were sitting.
Old.
Yeah, that's really old.
Don't remind me.
We were sitting in some sort of queue for registration, and I was just by myself, and I hear this Dublin accent behind me. I turn around. Who are you? I'm Kris. I'm Keith. Let's be friends. Okay.
The rest is history.
Yeah, 10 years later, here we are. So do you want to just introduce yourself? And so you're from Dublin. We met in London. What had you done before that, and how did you end up there?
So I suppose the whole S&C career journey started back in the rugby days. We played a lot, obviously growing up, and ended up getting to a decent enough standard that we ended up coming over to the UK. So I spent a lot of time there, and then chased the S&C dream through the university as well. So from there, did a lot of London Irish work, so with professional rugby, and then basically decided to move over here, where the youth development kind of party kicked off. So
maybe you can explain to people who don't know what exactly is SNC.
So strength and conditioning. So strength and conditioning is basically physical preparation for a specific event or a specific sport. So it obviously dilutes into very different sects. So so there could be youth development, or there could be disability, or there could be rehab and return to play kind of stuff.
That's me.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's obviously the element of just performance enhancing, just monitoring training, feedback to the athletes, testing, etc., etc.
Is it different from like people normally going to the gym and training and doing weight training? Is that different to strength and conditioning?
Yeah, well, it isn't. Let's be honest. The movements don't really vary too much. The intensity and the loads and the total volumes, they're monitored a lot more closely at a higher level. With the stuff that we're doing for the youth development, we try to keep it as general as possible, because it's very much the early stages of resistance training and elite training to a certain extent. So what we do with that stuff is quite different to what you do at an elite level. Again, the movements stay the same, but how the whole process is managed is very different.
Okay, so people basically working out at the gym doing strength and conditioning are just going to be randomly lifting weights that they can, right?
So strength and conditioning is kind of developed into a little bit of a buzzword, whereas before Massively. It used to be it was the word to describe the whole kind of athlete management concept and sports science, data loading, all the GPS capturing and all that kind of stuff. And then strength and conditioning, the buzzword, has now just become strength training and conditioning training. Like you'll see people doing the strongman. You'll see classes now for strength and conditioning. So I suppose it's kind of developed into a high intense form of training that people tend to think that athletes do all the time, whereas actually athletes do quite a small amount of work in the gym, so and athletes, and working with athletes, you have to consider that they are not gym monkeys, or they're not gym goers. They're athletes first of all, and then secondary to that, we use S&C to support what they do on the pitch, in the pool, on the court, wherever it might be.
And you guys were both doing like a variation of strength and conditioning when you were playing rugby, right?
As coaches or as players?
No, as players.
Yeah. So, my very first introduction to the gym was through actually a mutual, Alan Ryan, who's top quality S&C coach now in the UK. He was back doing his first postgraduate job in my secondary school in Dublin, and he took us through the gym as part of the rugby program. So he took us around all the machines, but it was, again, like you said, we were rugby players first. So we had our rugby technical stuff on the pitch 3, 4, 5 days a week, our games, and then supplementing that, we had our gym-based stuff, but it was purely to get us strong for rugby. It wasn't, let's get biceps, let's get triceps, let's get lats.
So then what would it look like? Sorry, I'm just...
No, I suppose take it as, so I'll go back to the professional rugby days when I used to work there, and it was the before days on the pitch, and then at the start of the week you do a heavy leg day to get that out of the way, because you need to be fresh for the game on the weekend, right? The following day you do a heavy upper body day. You'd probably have a day off midweek off the gym, but you'd still be on the pitch. And then closer to the end of the week, you'd do an explosive kind of power session. Now that's specific to rugby because it's very much a strength and a power sport, but obviously other sports would be very different. Like endurance can be very much like just totally like injury prevention and muscle preparation and even working on tendons and connective tissues just to get a better bounce out of every kind of stride or whatever it might be. So I suppose just focusing on the rugby days, that would be like a typical weekly layout. And then there's always, if you're not involved in the squad, then you might do 2 extra days on the gym or 2 extra days on the pitch doing conditioning work to top up the cardiovascular system or whatever that might be. So
yeah, and it's all sort of it's heavily goal orientated, isn't it? So you look at somebody's season, or for an athlete. I know we had Matt Cottrell on quite a while ago, and we were talking about you have your longer periodized cycles where you'll have an athlete who's trying to get at their peak in 4 years' time, so for their Olympians or whatever. So you kind of structure the program around that, don't you, around where you want their physical ability to peak. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think different sports will cater to these massive macro cycles better than others. You know, like it's easier, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier to predict, let's say, a sprinter or a long distance runner or a mid distance runner than it is for a contact sports player, or ice hockey, or even basketball player, because they're so much more susceptible to injury from an external stimulus, right? So you need to be able to manage that a hell of a lot differently than you would do somebody who's just focused on purely time, and they don't really have that much of a concern in terms of an external stimulus to offer an injury to them.
Like as a risk factor, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we spoke about that a little bit with Ollie V. He was saying how you've got your sort of internal injuries where you're not conditioned enough and you pull a hamstring running, and then you have the one where when you land, someone gives you a little nudge,
exactly,
and then you twist your ankle. Yeah. There's not much you can do to prevent those kind of injuries, the contact ones.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, obviously you have to, there's a certain element of hypertrophy that you need to have. We used to call it just protective armour. Do you know what I mean? Especially in rugby. So yeah, but I mean, if somebody falls on your leg sideways and breaks a bone, like
like they do at the World Cup.
Oh yeah, those serious injuries.
So
that's another level.
Do you know what I find so funny about watching that is that they fall over, they grab their shin, they can't stand, they're rolling around on the floor, and then a second later they're up and running again. It's like, stop being such a baby.
Oh
milking
it. It's terrible. Some players have got bad reputations from this World Cup as a result of that.
Yeah,
you'll notice
digress.
Yeah, you'll notice ones that are really injured when they go down and they stay still. Because when you're genuinely hurt, you're not moving around. You're frozen.
Yeah, like the poor guy at, what's his name? It starts with T, whatever. At the end where he pulled his hamstring.
Oh, the English midfielder.
Guy,
oh yeah.
I
saw that.
Yeah, that's an
Bless,
injury.
poor thing. He couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry for him.
Yeah, he wasn't rolling around in agony. He genuinely hurt. So yeah, I think when you're looking at an athlete who comes to you, so you've got the youth development, but you also would have people looking for programs and help, and just look, I'm an amateur, but I have a sport. So how would you go? Like how would you start that process? If someone was to get in touch and say, hey, look, I want to run a triathlon. I've been doing it for so many years, but I'm not very good, and I want to just get through the next one next year.
Everyone's different, right? So it's a difficult question to answer. You have your processes that you go through. I generally just tend to look at their movement skills. So I don't want to call it an FMS because I don't use anything like that, but there's a few key movements that I'd like to look at and then see, okay, you need this, you need this, you need this. We'd always look for muscle kind of imbalances. So generally, let's just say hamstrings tend to be tighter than quad or weaker than quads, so that can be a cause of an injury sometimes. You're a big advocate of tight hips, so yeah. So that can be, and that I've seen it firsthand, that can be a cause of a lot of injuries and a lot of tears as well. So there may not be muscle imbalances there. So I don't know. I just like to look at their movements first of all, and then progress on from there. Especially with us, like if it's not a full-time athlete, there's so much more at play than what the books tell us there is. Do you know? So there's
like what?
Like life, work,
life.
Family, kids,
stress,
bosses wrecking your head, stress. You know, like your car breaks down, you can't make a session. It's endless, the list. You know, and the amount of excuses I've had from people, but they're genuine excuses. You know, so I tend to steer away from long-term planning and preparation just because of where I learnt my kind of from Alan Ryan, right? Because it was just you couldn't prepare for. You could prepare maybe a week ahead, a week in advance, but obviously we'd have our long-term goals and we'd always work towards that. But you have to be able to adapt and change on the spot, and it's that's what makes it interesting, right? That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, that's where the coaching comes in, isn't it?
So you do a lot of this stuff for yourself too, because I've seen some of your Instagram stuff, like a lot of strength and conditioning for you and weightlifting. And what is that a hobby of yours, or is that something that you do?
Well, a long time ago, I actually retired from rugby for about the 5th or 6th time.
Why?
I just always get sucked back into it. No, but I wanted to give Olympic weightlifting a go because I was always actually quite strong for my size.
I've heard that.
And obviously, like body weight and strength is quite a major factor in weightlifting sports. So I decided to give it a go, and I just got quite bored of it. Like there was no kind of excitement. It was the same thing over and over and over again. So that's why I went back to rugby. But I've always just kept it ticking over and kept it going. And it's always nice to be good at something, right? So
good at something.
Absolutely, yeah. No, but I think it's good to kind of talk to or walk the walk a little bit as well. You know, like I was guilty of it for a long time of not actually training too much, just because we'd be in it all day, every day, do you know, and then you have to kind of do it. It's just, it can be boring, like, do you know what I mean? Whereas, if you're kind of if you're focusing on other things, and it's quite exciting to get back into it, and I can really see the enjoyment of it again. So it's good. Yeah, it's good to be back into it and enjoying it.
And how did you get into youth development? Because that's kind of your niche at the moment.
Yeah, well, I suppose studying in uni, there was always these options to go off for special populations. So there was youth, there was females. Obviously, there was a special population. There was injuries, and rehab clients. So I never actually explored the youth development option. It was always kind of something I was a little bit afraid of. But we just got thrown in the deep end about, was it 5 years ago now? Yeah. And schools approached us to say, okay, we need some strength and conditioning. It was kind of, I suppose, the first sign of it out here, wasn't it?
Yeah. From a structured club team with the money to really fund it.
Exactly, yeah.
And do the schools have like proper gyms that you can do stuff like that?
The facilities are incredible. Amazing. Like they're some of the best I've seen. So,
typical Dubai.
Yeah, I know, but like they're sitting kind of empty,
almost
half
empty,
the time, you know. So it's, but fair play to them. But I see it improving, and I see it developing a lot more further down the line. Because it's definitely gone from strength to strength since we started, and if it wasn't for a couple of schools actually had to close down, we'd have a much bigger range of youth athletes kind of on the book, so to speak. So
when you got thrown in the deep end and you started this whole youth development, tell me about the process of actually, like, what do you do?
Yeah,
what are some
where
of the
do you start?
and what are the considerations? How's it
you have to manage the head coaches as well, right? So obviously we come from quite a safety kind of focused background, you know, especially with youth athletes. But sometimes their coaches, they just want to smash them, like, you know. So it's like, okay, first protocol is we need to kind of manage people's expectations here of what these kids can actually handle. Yes, they can run around for hours on end on a pitch or do whatever they need to do, but can they come into the gym and do a strongman strength and conditioning circuit that that the coaches want them to do? No, probably not really, and they'll probably pick up a few unwarranted injuries along the way. So.
And when we're talking about youth, exactly what age group is this? They're all going through puberty, ideally, right?
It varies, but yeah, they're in and around that age. We try to not to avoid younger kids,
but where do you start? Like, what age group normally?
Currently about 12
okay, that's
13.
quite young.
Yeah, and that's why we need to be quite careful of how we manage everything. And
because some 12-year-olds are really little. They're still really little.
Yeah, and that comes into there's one aspect of youth S&C, which is chronological versus biological age. So, like, there could be two 12-year-olds of the exact same age, but one could have the body of a 15-year-old and one could have the body of a 10-year-old. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's quite a fine line that you have to kind of walk along. And then within that, again, there's another element that we need to consider is relative age effect, right? So yes, there could be two kids in the same year of school, but one could be literally 11 months younger than the other kid.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a really important thing to consider when we're training, but also when we're allowing people to progress and when we're picking squads and when we're doing it, because these younger kids are going to get left behind, and it's been proven. There's a Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Yeah, so a lot of kids fall through the net because they're just that one step behind because of their age the whole time.
Yeah, in that book he talks about, it starts off, have you familiar with the book?
I've read it, but it was a very long time ago, so you guys.
So he's kind of getting to the point where how people really become outliers in their craft and how they get to the very, very top. And the book starts off with the idea that I think it's him and his wife, or a husband and wife, are watching their son playing baseball, and while the dad's watching the game, the wife's reading the program, and she starts to notice that all the kids on the team are born in the first 3 months of the year. And she says it to him and he kind of ignores it, whatever. But then he starts to think about it and he starts to look at the pro baseball players, and they're all born in the first, like a huge percentage are born in the first 3 months, then the next bit, and then it tails off through the year. So he comes up to the kind of conclusion that if you're in the early part of your year, so if the cutoff age is say the 1st of January, and if you're 31st of December, you're going to be in the older group, and if you're in the 1st of January, you're going to be in the younger group. So you're on the pitch playing as a 10-year-old, and your opposition player is born in December of the same year. It's going to be 12 months smaller. So you're going to stand out. So when you stand out, you perform better. When you perform better, your coaches put you forward for the regional team or the district team, and then you go to the district team and you get better coaching. And then when you get better coaching, you become a better player. So you go back to your team and you stand out even more. And then all the praise and the accolades are going to you, while your teammate, who's 11 months younger than you, is just disinterested. He gets more satisfaction from playing computer, so off he goes. And then his experience of sport and physicality and competition is just negative, completely disruptive to the rest of his life, and he doesn't follow a healthy lifestyle from there. So that's good that you guys are taking that into account.
Yeah, and I suppose it's harder to do and to monitor when we're doing like sport specific S&C, because we kind of have to prepare for the sport specifically, but within our physical literacy program, it's definitely a major part of what we do, because we're not really training for a specific event or a specific sport. We're literally just in there to try and educate kids on movement skills, why it's good to in your whole life, you know, like whether it be athletic excellency or whether it just be just move and don't be...
Just to feel good and to be healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting here in Dubai as well, because you have so many different cultures, and cultures tend to have different relationships with food and exercise. So you have a lot of people say, I'm Australian, but we grow up at like 5 years old, we're doing nippers and learning how to... So nippers is our version of surf life saving. It's exactly the same thing, but you learn at 5. So at 5 years, they give you like a little hat every Sunday. You go to the beach and you learn how to like literally not get drowned by these massive mammoth waves, and you learn that at 5. So by the time you're like 10, you know the ocean and you know your body so well. But then you have some other cultures that they never go in the water and they never swim or they never do exercise because it's almost a little bit taboo to get into that stuff. So do you have any experience with seeing a huge like a variation of kids all the same age, but from vastly different cultures with vastly different experiences of exercise?
Absolutely. I mean, like, one of the schools we work in, Dubai College, it's quite a mixed demographic. Obviously caters to sports, so there's rugby, there's football, there's basketball, there's cricket, there's netball, but yeah, absolutely, like, and that's what we're trying to manage. Is some sports are way ahead in terms of athletic abilities and it's because of their upbringing, and it's because of the nature of the sport as well. Like, cricket doesn't really require a huge amount of, I don't want to say athleticism because it is actually quite an athletic sport, but the types of movements that people do in cricket isn't a massive builder of all-round athletic ability.
It's also not the main determinant of the sport.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. It's more of a skill-based sport. Whereas rugby, and there's very, very clear differences. That
you need a lot of strength.
Yeah, absolutely, and
speed.
the agility and everything that comes with that. So we're working a lot with the teams to just improve all-round athletic ability, especially at that age. And to be honest, the work we've been doing over the last 3 years, it's starting to come to fruition now. Like, we're starting to really see, God, these lads are really benefiting from it. And the girls as well.
I was about to ask you that.
So I've done a little bit of stuff with the girls, but Rune's been doing loads of work with them. And obviously some major areas are ankles, knees and hips with the females that we need to keep an eye on, and we've definitely reduced the injury rate over the last couple of years, because there was at least like 8 or 10 per year, whereas this year I think we only had 2 or 3 knee injuries. So I mean, it's getting there, it's working, and we're starting to build a good kind of ethos within the school that I suppose kids are kind of starting to buy into, but it takes time, but it's getting there now. So it's
it's also nice to get kids exercising and getting really like used to that being a part of their life, because then it's a part of their life forever. Like, you just need it because it makes you feel good, and
absolutely.
That's nice. I remember that growing up, and I love it. Whenever I don't, it's like, oh, what's happening?
But Australia was huge in terms of just fitness in general, isn't it? Like,
I don't ever remember not doing something. Like, every Sunday I was going to nippers and literally like just trying not to drown. And seriously, like, you don't understand the waves in Dubai. This is the most placid thing in the world. You have waves in Sydney that they take you over, and then they throw you into like this washing machine, and you're under for ages. You have to learn how to hold your breath, and then you have to learn how to grab the sand underneath so you don't get dragged in. You literally like claw the sand. That's the first thing they teach you. Dive under the wave, grab the sand.
Good.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
No,
in the washing machine.
No, seriously, in Australia, like, dive under, grab the sand. It's the only thing that gets you from not being in this washing machine. And yeah, I'm digressing. So.
No, it's funny that, because what you're saying is true, because when I went to Sydney, lived on Bondi for a bit, and there's a thing called backpackers rip, where at the end of Bondi Beach, the riptide would take backpackers out around the headland and throw them in on the beach. That's like what, 2 kilometers down the coast.
Yeah, stupid people who do that.
Silly Irish and Brits and
yeah, because you guys
Swedes.
You don't know how to swim in an ocean that's so like alive, and you gotta have a lot of respect.
I don't even know how to swim in an ocean that's quiet and placid. Like there's the sea. That water's freezing. Yeah. I'm gonna get back in the car.
Not going in there.
Yeah. It's too cold. I'm going home. This is a silly idea.
Yeah, it's so growing up I would do say nippers every weekend. We used to, for school sports, get catamarans out and go across the harbour, and I remember like a catamaran, we'd do like catamaran races, so you'd go from one side of the harbour to the other as like our school sport. So you would get into the ocean and push it when there was no wind, and literally 4 girls in the ocean pushing this catamaran all across the harbour. Swimming pushing. Yes, it's full of sharks. So like, what was I thinking? But yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, it's good, but I think the key thing there is that you're active. There's definitely, but there's an emotional element to handling the stresses and the intensities of sport, right? Whatever it might be, like the more accustomed you become to it, the less likely you are to panic and to A, drown, or B, cause an injury. Do you know, like.
And the whole teamwork aspect of it, you know, that's...
Yeah, you get really, definitely as an Australian, you get really used to, like, very aggressive oceans. So you come here and it's like, wow, there's nothing here. It's amazing. I'm not going to die. And then you see other people swimming in the ocean here, and there's, like, a tiny wave, and they're panicking and jumping and running, and it's like, oh... Yeah, bless.
Yeah, they don't know how to grab the sand. In Ireland, we were just playing sport. We were just field sports all weekend. Yeah. Rain or snow, almost. You'd be out playing. But I think that's a big difference between here is the weather. Like, it's just not permitting.
I think as well that's the cultural thing as well. Like, you guys in Ireland are used to doing other things. In Australia, everything's about like the ocean, and you just learn everything that is water based. You guys obviously were entirely different cultures, and we learn sports so differently because of the climate that we live in. And here again, super different too. It's no sport. I'm joking. Yeah,
but what's interesting here is that everything is very much based around academies, you know, which is a bit of a culture shock to us, because we were just like, it was wherever you grew up, that was your local team, right? Whether it be Gaelic football, hurling, rugby, whatever. Like, you don't for the parish, right?
Yeah, your local parish.
You play for the parish, but here it's like I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, that everything's paid for, everything is professional coaches, which is great. Like, it's not a bad thing, but it's just it's different.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is like just the money that they have here was there first, whereas growing up in Ireland, it's like the money came way later. The money comes from the people who enjoy the sport. So we would go to play our weekend game, and we literally put your bag down on the sideline, and you get changed out of your tracksuit into your kit just under the trees. Like, there's no state-of-the-art facility with showers and stuff. And then the more popular the sport is, as people get older, the more the fans come, they pay the money, and then the sport grows. So it does it a completely flipped way. Here it's just, we have the money, let's build a facility and put all the best testing kit. That's actually one thing you could talk about, is the difference between the testing, because you spoke earlier a little bit about data and the collection of data.
Yeah.
How important, because I know from working with you a few times back when we started with one of the schools, we would do the testing and then we would do the retesting, and only a few kids would really on the actual test improve. Yeah. But we'll have seen them over the year change from like night to day. Yeah. I remember there was one kid, and he would jump to the ceiling like something out of a computer, and then when we got him under the bar to squat, it was just complete meltdown. Yeah. But he had spring, he was fast. It looked a little bit weird looking at him. Do you remember those guys from the Gems?
So what, Academy, he didn't have strength, or
how would you call it?
What that is, it's everyone has a certain element of strength, right? but you just need to be able to transfer that across. So obviously he was probably quite light, okay, so he could just bounce from his own body weight, etc. But put a bar on his back and ask him to use his core to brace and then squat down and do the exact same movement, like, was a completely different issue. And that, I suppose, the testing battery that we choose as well would need to be very closely monitored and closely kind of and really, I suppose, how you choose it. It's how to explain.
Like you have to scrutinize. Yeah, I know. Like your selection, you got to choose the right test for the right people.
Yeah. But
like
then
a 1
when
RM will be too much.
Yeah. So what we do and what we've developed over the years, like it started off with bodyweight tests, right? So it was quite basic, and it was something that you probably wouldn't see a huge amount of benefit from or improvements upon either. Although it was probably the right choice of stuff to do for the kids, it was very old school in terms of 60 seconds, you do X amount of reps and you try and improve that. Okay, yes, we're going to see benefits, but is it really going to benefit the sport and whatever? So what we've kind of developed now, and it's been a lot of kind of trial and error, but we're just kind of find not a one fixes all, but the one that's most suitable for an individual themselves. So we've based it all upon body weight. So we've developed a table that, let's say you're level 1 all the way through to level 7. Level 1 is literally 20 reps of a bodyweight squat. All right, if you can do that, you get to progress on to level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. And as we improve along the levels, the percentage of body weight that we're using for the movements increases, and then the reps decrease. So, and this falls back to the chronological versus the biological age. Like, if somebody can do it, let them do it. Like, I'm not going to listen to a book who says he shouldn't do X, Y, and Z because he's 16. Because if he's 16 with an 18-year-old's body, like, I'm going to let him go to a 5RM. If he can do a 5RM easy, I'm going to let him go to a 3RM. Do you know? If the form is good and solid and safe, then I've no issues letting them do that because they've got the athletic ability to do that. So I think this is the best approach that we've kind of come up with, and it took a Dunning-Kruger effect where you kind of, so you go up, you think you know it all, and then once you start doing the stuff, it's like, oh my god, I know nothing, like I'm terrible. And now we're kind of coming up to that level of, right, this is a nice fit for developing age groups and stuff like that. So just because it's all relative to their body weight, right? So
I think a big thing just to say on this is, if people are listening, you have to remember the logistics behind these tests constrains what test you pick as well. So if you've got 40 kids in a room, you've only got them for an hour because they have other stuff going on. Yeah, you have to be efficient with your system.
Absolutely, and that's one thing we've had to kind of simplify as well the whole way through, is that, okay, there's 20 tests we can choose from, all probably have a nice could give us a nice kind of a graph, let's say, if we want to see progressions in this, that and the other. But is it relative, and is it, like, can it be done in that space of time? Because we do a testing week now, where we kind of get all the sports in on different days, and okay, it's a bit time consuming, but at the end of the day, it gives the teachers and it gives the heads of sports and the head coaches the data that they want. It also gets buy-in from the kids as well, right? So we found that just to be the best, because you have to tackle the emotional side of it as well, and to generate that buy-in is very important. Just like, because there's always resistance, there's always hesitancy to get into the gym or to do the fitness training, and like, everyone wants to run around the pitch after a ball or play their sport or swim in the pool. That's what they want to do, right? But they don't want to be in the gym, and that's the constant battle. So we have to try and constantly, we can explain everything to them under the sun, but if they don't care, they don't care. Whereas if we make it interesting for them, or make it exciting for them, or make it competitive for them, whereas the cricket boy can compete against the rugby boy because they're totally different body weights, but they can still be the same level on the scale, if that makes sense. That's actually getting quite a lot of positive feedback for us.
So what sports are you doing these tests with at the moment at the schools?
Well, at the moment it's netball, cricket, rugby, and basketball and football. But at this age, we don't really want to focus on sport-specific testing batteries. We're just kind of focusing on athletic development, and that's our kind of philosophy. They can focus on the sport-specific stuff, in my opinion, when they are a bit more elite, when they have all the fundamental skills under their belt, because at the moment when they're growing they don't really, so we're kind of coming at it from a preparation angle for university or for contracted sports or whatever it might be. So
do you find that there's a big difference between youth development in terms of gender, in terms of like girls and boys?
How do you mean? In terms of buying into it, or in terms of
all
the girls are absolutely the easiest to coach. Lads are an absolute nightmare.
Why is that?
Teenage boys just want to do as heavy as they can every time. They'll come into the gym. What are we doing today, Chris? Right, we're doing X, Y, Z. I was like, no, I just want to bench press. I'm going to test my 1RM. I was like, well, okay. Yeah. I'll go into the progressive overload and try and tell them everything that, okay, this is how you're going to get strong. Because if you want to just do 1RMs, you're not going to get strong. So I always have to, that's an ongoing battle. And I always want to have a few extra minutes at the end to do curls and tricep dips or whatever it might be. But the girls are brilliant. They come in, there's no ego. Okay, X, Y, Z, put the music on, job done, and they'll crack on with it, Obviously there's a little bit of hesitancy from time to time. Like, they're teenagers, they're going to want to have some fun and this and the other. So that's why we try to introduce games to the sessions and trying to keep it as exciting as possible.
What type of games do you introduce?
In the warm-up, we'll do like races or like little competitive things. I love like little agility games, like trying to slap each other's knees, or just trying to play like whack-a-mole with your hands, or like little, what's that, centipede races? What are those?
Wheelbarrows and stuff?
Yeah, wheelbarrow races. Centipede.
Is that where you hold someone's legs?
And they run and they walk, yeah.
But like, it's stuff like that that just, and the screams are everywhere, and you have to make it exciting, because like, I know from our own like experiences. What's the Pirlo quote? What was that?
Warm-ups. Pirlo, the Juventus midfielder, he said he hates warm-ups. He hates everything about them. Then he goes on for things like, warm-ups are just masturbation for conditioning coaches.
And I totally agree. It's like, absolutely. It's like okay, we can do our prep, this, that, and the other, but you can do that in your session as well. Like, you, as long as you get warm, get ready, get mobile, and do your stuff, then I think the benefits are there anyway. So.
I think also, even into adulthood, it's easier sometimes on the whole to coach females than it is males, because they have the ego.
It?
Yeah,
definitely.
Because males have the ego, and they're either, it's not necessarily that they always want to do 1RM, because adults will understand that a bit more, but when a guy has, let's say, take the man flu idea, when he's not feeling well, it's like a million excuses under the sun, and it's just, come on, dude, we have to like try and push it. Oh, just this reason, there's that reason, and okay, yeah, okay. And it's just a bit more difficult than when you have a female come in. She's just like, okay, what is a coach? What are we doing? And then she'll ask questions. Why? Okay. She'll absorb it and she'll go and do it. Whereas a guy will like try and finish her sentences sometimes, or he tries to like, yeah, I know that, or yeah, I already know that, or yeah. And it's just like, okay. Not all guys, obviously, but you can get those
on a whole.
There's more males will act that way, bring their ego into the gym, try and go a little bit heavier, or be afraid to say that was too heavy. Can I go a bit lighter? Or look, I'm not feeling great today. Can we just chill a little bit? Whereas females would just be, you're the expert. I'm here. You're telling me what to do. Okay, let's do it. Which is great.
They're a pleasure to work with.
Yeah,
most of the time.
Oh. Yeah. Well, then, wait a sec. If you want to go as a whole, there's other things that females are more difficult about, but we won't go into that just yet. Let's leave it there. So, what kind of improvements do you see, like in in an athlete, in a typical kid who'll come in from over two years, say, of development? What would be like in your view as a success?
A success is, and Matt mentioned this to me like 4 years ago. He says, and it really stuck with me. It was he mentioned we're really just trying to develop a positive relationship between the kids and fitness and health, and if that's achieved, then that's a major plus, right?
That's awesome.
That really stuck with me, and that's why we try to keep it as enjoyable as possible. And then I suppose one thing that really I was impressed with on the most recent testing that we've done is all of our kids just looked so much better than some of the new kids that came in. Like their movement patterns, their ability to do a triple broad jump rather than one broad jump, like their ability to push a bar fast, or to, you know, like, and it's okay, yes, there's data and there's figures and there's numbers, but it's the stuff you see with your eye that is the most impressive stuff I find. And I suppose you don't have to be a coach to pick it up, but it's a lot easier to pick it up when you're constantly looking at these particular movements. So yeah, that's definitely those two things.
Would you recommend that all, say, youth do strength and conditioning irrespective of whether they're in a particular sport? Do you think that it's something that is
100%,
important?
100%. And that's why we have our physical literacy program, right? So we work alongside the PE curriculum, and they will come in out of their PE sessions to do a strength and conditioning session once a week.
So you do basically two things. You do sports-specific strength and conditioning for youth, so all of the team sports, and then you do the physical literacy
stuff, which is just general kind of preparation for life, I suppose, isn't it? Like it's just kind of, it's a mixture of everything. We do hand-eye coordination stuff, we do foot-eye coordination stuff, we do agility, we do all this kind of stuff. Just as many planes, as many different movements, as many different directions as we can, just to broaden their, I don't say horizons, but broaden their scope of abilities.
It's just to raise their baseline ability, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So when they finish developing at adulthood, then they've got a highest of standards possible.
If we take this back to like the brain and stuff, it's so important for those areas and really to be activated and to have really strong neural connections.
Absolutely.
It makes you so much healthier in neurologically, I think.
Yeah.
And
there's loads of infographics online of cognitive function, like pre and post exercise, and the brain is just so much more alert and accepting of new information as well. So that'll be one of the things that we focus on, is don't go too intense in a session, obviously, but when they go into class, then after they're soaking things up that much better, you know. So,
and as kids, they have a lot of, you know, looking at the aesthetic side of it as well, they have a lot of body image issues, that it's better to get them into a world of exercise and health to build that foundation and build that into their mentality, so that they have something to fall back on when things get a little bit tougher when they get into an adulthood.
Yeah, especially like positive, like body imaging, particularly in a day and age when everything seems to be blurred, all the lines everywhere in terms of like gender and what you're meant to look like and what you're meant to feel like. If all of that's so blurred, it's nice to be able to feel good about your own body and have a positive relationship with that. And exercise is a huge facet of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and also it teaches people that this is what it takes when I'm older if I want to improve myself and change my goals. Like, it's been imprinted in me from at a developmental stage, as opposed to you get to adulthood, you put on a bit of weight because college life or work life gets a bit stressful, or you have an injury and a breakdown, and now suddenly you're faced with this new challenge and you just cannot comprehend how difficult it is to achieve the goal to change your body, you know, because you never did anything as a kid.
But we see that all the time, right? With our client base, right? Is people come in, whether it be to the circuit classes or to PT or to semi-private. Like, some people come in and they're totally at zero, like -0, and it's a massive journey. Like, to obviously it's achievable, right? But
yeah,
this is your right leg. This is your left leg.
Sometimes it's that. It's so
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, touching on what you said about your sort of movement assessment, I have a similar thing that it's essentially extracted from a standard professional level warm up, and I've just scaled it all the way back to lift your right leg, lift your left leg. Okay, you can do that. Now just do that the whole length, and then after 2 steps, they lift one knee up like a march. They lift one knee up, and they're wobbling. They're they've gone because their knees moved into a new height. They're not used to it. This leg just goes crazy. So, it's all, from my view, I can pin them on that spectrum of like a pro athlete will run high knees all the way up the track, but this sedentary financier who's in his 40s,
people that have never moved in their life, like in yoga, sometimes I see people really afraid of doing extension, like back extension, and it's like, but actually afraid, like really afraid, and it's like, it's just so bizarre. It's so bizarre.
I was chatting to a physio the other day, and just on that, even spinal flexion, people are terrified of. It's like, it's okay, like you can bend your back, like just don't do it with loads of weight on. But people got the whole, people gone terrified of certain movements, like.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. People with me, they're like, oh no, but don't do that, like, because of your back. And I'm like, my back is fine. What are you talking about? No, you'll hurt it again. I'm like, no, it's already hurt, it's fine. But yeah, really worried and concerned. And it's like, it's fine, like, relax. People are afraid to move.
You'd be surprised, like, people just they don't even realize they can't move. They're like, whoa, that's way more difficult than I was expecting. Okay, well, we're gonna have to work on that. Because if I put weights and kilos on your back, we're going to have one effect, but we're missing this whole bottom level that you're just not going to be able to benefit from when you get to the future stage. But as kids, you can, if they've had an exercise history as kids, you can see in their adulthood, because you've got their history, you've got where they were, this injury, I used to play sport as a kid, okay, so right now, when we lift your left leg and right leg, you're really wobbly and you're really unstable. But I know that your cellular makeup has got this idea of how to move. So we're going to make a bit more progress than how far away you seem right now. But then you get people who just never exercised as a kid. They were just, and I saw this with the military guys. I was so surprised at how poor the infantry guys were when I went to work.
That's really surprising.
So
isn't physical training a part of that?
Yeah,
that process.
Yeah, for sure. And this is why they were breaking down, because they were thrown into an environment where they were being made exercise 3-4 times a week, and they were being made run 20 kilometers in the morning. They were being made march with 25 kilos on their back for 10 kilometers. That's like a 2-hour walk. But they had never done that exercise as a kid. I was specifically with a infantry unit. An infantry unit tends to be the guys who, let's say this, the unit that I was with, the guys were from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So they were these are early 20s, they were either in gangs as kids on the streets, just hanging around, not involved in sport, not involved in like structured activity. They were boy racers, they were petrol heads, motorbikes, cars, or they were gamers, or they just did nothing. So when they got to 17, 18, 19 and realized they needed to start thinking about a career, they chose the military, and now it's, right, bag on your back, 10 kilometers,
Do you know, I've seen that a lot. I have a quite a close friend who did military service. He's quite young, and he was like quite overweight. And as soon as he went into the military, he got so thin and so strong because of the same reason. 9 months in military training here.
Well, see, for every one of him, there's probably another one who's broken down at some point in the process. Not like broken down and had massive problems, but just someone's developed back pain. If you were probably to take those guys through the test that you're running, you're going to see, like, I used to start the sessions, everybody in a line here and the other half in a line here. Okay, I want everybody to squat. Just do a squat for me. And I wanted to see exactly in one down and up. Okay, you guys are okay. You, and you come down to this end. Okay, now we're going to do a lunge. and now we're going to do a push-up. Okay, now I know where like half the group are good and the other half we can sort of see already why you're in the rehab group or why your lower limb is injured. And a lot of them couldn't squat, heels up, knees collapsing in, backs curling forward. Like, I would have never seen in the sporting world, you would have never seen this. Like, not one person.
So I guess to go back, this is probably the benefit.
100%, yeah.
It took us 10 minutes to get there.
Well, it's important to know the spectrum that these people do survive. And in the military, where you think you're getting badass, it's so important to have movement patterns installed when you're a kid.
100%.
Because you're going to become an adult. Even if you can discontinue your sport or your activity, you're going to probably get hurt at some point. You need to be able to get back to a level of fitness. So you need to be able to move. That's what I think.
Yeah, 100%. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Right?
Yeah. So what's happening with you then in the future? You training for anything specific at the moment?
Personally, I'm getting back into a little bit of powerlifting. There's a competition in September. Was that 2 months away?
What's powerlifting?
Sorry, powerlifting is squat, bench press and deadlift for as heavy as you can, basically, in one day. So that should be fun. I've never done one before, so yeah, give it a go, see how we get on, and then go from there. In terms of youth development stuff, we are putting a team together. There's about 3 of us now, 3 to 4 of us, of coaches for September. So we're looking to approach more schools, more academies, and then hopefully make better athletes moving forward in Dubai.
Well, that's great. If anybody wants to get in touch with you to do that, how do they get in contact with you?
Give me an email. It's Kris with a K .g at thephysicaltrainingcompany.ae, or info@thephysicaltrainingcompany.ae.
Cool. Amazing.
Are you on Instagram and you're there?
Oh, sorry. What's my Instagram? Kris Greene _PTC. Yeah.
Cool.
Green with an E. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yep. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
To us.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.